So you're all very welcome to Careers with Classics 2024. This event is organized by the Department of Ancient Classics here at Maynooth and with the support of the Careers and Employability Service. My name is Cosetta Cadau, and today I would like to welcome you with my department here to Maynooth. I hope that you will find today useful, informative, and most of all, inspiring. I will lead this event with a panel of 4 speakers and an impressive audience of undergraduate, postgraduate students, guidance counselors, and secondary school pupils from all over Ireland. This is the 4th edition of this event, and we are very happy to welcome you to the campus and also remotely on Teams. We welcome pupils from St. Peter's College, Dunboyne, Holy Faith, Clontarf, Bremore, Educate Together, Balbriggan, and Gorey Community School, only to name a few. We are so pleased to see that this event has become a yearly appointment with schools to meet and discover the place of classics in the professional world, a world that changes continuously and in which classics fits in different forms, answering different needs each time. Some of the skills that are in highest demand in a wide range of professions are precisely those that you acquire and develop with a degree in classics, such as communication skills, critical thinking, research skills. With a degree in classics, you will be fully equipped and shaped as a desirable candidate who will stand out because of those skills. Questions. We're all here with a lot of questions in mind. What is classics? Here at Ancient Classics, we study the history and civilization of ancient Greece and Rome. That is their language, literature, philosophy, art and architecture, archaeology, from the ancient Mediterranean world, from the Near East to the British Isle. We train our students to ask questions. Questioning history, the meaning of a literary text or of a political event, the reasons why or how a particular event took place, or a philosophical problem emerged are constantly up for discussion.
Hand up if you're...
We challenge the past continuously because as we move in time, the past does too. What had a meaning and was read in a certain way in the 1870s was read differently in the 1920s and is read differently again today. Questions and ideas evolve all the time. For instance, the idea of cultural identity evolves continuously in time and in space. Our definition of cultural identity today differs from other people's idea and also differs from the idea that we had 10 years ago as boundaries evolve, expand, overlap, and sometimes disappear or re-emerge. Engaging with the Greek and Roman past is exciting and makes the past relevant to our time and life as we experience concerns that were preoccupying the ancient Greeks and Romans, and that are still central to our life today. So, a classics degree is not just about content and subject matter. As a classics graduate, you acquire knowledge and expertise, but also the ability to think critically about the past and the present, to understand how bias emerges and functions, how cultural identities are shaped, how societies develop multiple perspectives. In sum, you become profoundly aware of how people think about themselves and others. These skills prepare you for the professional world, as well as for your personal life, and stand you in a solid position for a very broad range of jobs. We have a very simple message for you today, and that is that classics is not a vocational line of study. It is not a one-way system to become a teacher or an academic. It is a degree that enables you to go through every door, wherever human interaction is key. And we have shared many stories that vouch for this over the past 3 years. Come to study classics and grow into a rounded individual and a valuable asset to a broad and diverse range of professional fields, such as publishing, advertising and creative agencies, governmental organization and civil service, the education system, human resources and recruitment agencies, legal and administration services, the list goes on. Today's event provides a much-needed opportunity to discuss the future of classics graduates and to explore the diverse range of professional contexts in which they contribute. And I received so many questions about this that I'm sure you will find some answers useful today. We are proud to welcome to the Department 4 classes graduates, some from our own department here at Maynooth, who have found success in a variety of exciting careers. Teresa Ryder, Ben Morse, Emily Lefebvre, and Pamela Moran have kindly agreed to talk to us about their learning and professional journey through the path they've taken since leaving classics, from their studies to their current job, to help us understand how to best market the skills they've gained with their degree in classics. This event aims to be as interactive as possible, so there will be a Q&A session at the end of our interviews, but also feel free to raise your hand or type your question in the chat section, and I will address them as we go. So without further ado, let's begin. I'm going to pass on to Enan from the Careers and Employability Service here at Maynooth, who will tell us all about the graduate student survey. Thank you.
Great to see you all here. You're very welcome. My name is Enan. I'm one of the careers advisors or guidance counsellors, whatever you want to call us, working here in Maynooth. I got 10 minutes, real quick, to go through 3 hopefully very brief points for you. Hopefully you get something out of this. I know there's a different audience here online and in person, so I've focused a very brief career talk on what you might get out of a degree, what you might get out of a degree in arts and humanities, and specifically, obviously, classics for today. But the focus is on you, not what employers will get out of you as a graduate later on. So I've got a couple of quick points. I'm going to start really broad. Why would classics be good for your career broadly? I'll go a little bit more detail then about just general options that you would have as a graduate, where you might go, how much you get paid, that kind of thing. And then a little bit more detail about what other people do, just so you can have a little bit of perspective on top of the expertise and experience here that's in the room today. So, broadly speaking, right, 3 types of courses might be in your future if you want to go to university or a training college of some sort. You'll know the apprenticeships that train you for a specific job. Appealing because they scale you up for a job, but they're really narrow and they only show you that part of the world. Then you've got science and engineering, of course. They show you a little bit of a broader thing about an aspect of our physical world. Nice. Chemistry, biology, engineering, some of these things. They orientate you kind of towards a job to some extent, a bit broader than the apprenticeships, but they orientate towards like an aspect of our physical world. Grant. Arts and humanities, and specifically classics, is quite different. It'll show you a lot more about the very complicated world of people. And you know how that is already. Like, you know how complicated interactions can be. It's hugely important. So this gives students an understanding of how the world of people works, among other things. Now, our expert here today will know that there's a million other things it does too. So I'm just going to show that one angle on classics from the careers perspective today. It shows a little bit to the reader about what moves people to do things, an understanding of how you navigate our complex social world, an understanding of what it's like to be a person. Social science do it too, I suppose, but they'd emphasize measurement, for example, like how much does a bucket of happiness weigh or whatever. If we build an understanding of how people behave, the idea is that you can use that understanding to navigate this complex social world. That's useful for you on a personal level, and that's a really good thing. Thinking about the jobs and careers, every single company, and I mean every organization, and every job within those organizations, they exist for a reason. They aim to solve problems that people have. Some do it through, fair enough, making products or services, and of course for money, absolutely. Some do it through maybe public works, like governments or charities or NGOs to benefit people, not for money. Whatever, they're still aiming to solve problems for people. And in order to do that effectively, they have to understand people. They need to know which problems we have, how people behave, how they act, how they react to things, what they see, what they don't see, and so on. If you build an understanding of how people behave, you can use that information very successfully in a career. Just before I get into the career stuff even further, really, I'm talking as well about you on a personal level. If you read, and if you read from loads of other perspectives, you start to see yourself in the stories that you're reading, in the articles that you're interacting with, and you learn a lot about yourself. So that information primarily benefits yourself before you even start thinking about a job. And great, that's what it's for. That's fantastic. You want that kind of thing. From the point of view of careers, though, the minute you start thinking about, right, now that I know a little bit about what problems people have if you even remotely think, right, I would actually now like to help other people solve these problems, then you're in the realm of employability straight away. Once you're thinking that, and once you're starting to act on it, that is extremely valuable to other people, or employers in this case. That's just valuable. You'll be able to get a job with that perspective, broadly speaking. Secondly, then, if you also use your studies through classics to identify which of the problems in society or for yourself you think are of most importance, then you can orientate towards an occupation that works with that topic or works with those problems, and then you're setting yourself up for an extremely satisfying career match. One probably where you'll do well too. You know what I mean? Let me tell you, with all the conversations that I have with students in my office, time and time again, when I see somebody getting good at a job at which they feel they are doing something worthwhile, they are extremely satisfied with their job, which is what I would like for you. Hopefully what you'd like for yourselves. So I'll move on just broadly. Still broad, but getting a little bit more detailed. For career progress, the graduates who seem to get the most out of their classics degree that I interact with, they seem to know a great deal about themselves and why they're doing their course. They seem to learn a great deal about themselves when they're reading their assignments, when they're going through their course material. They seem to be aware of the problems and worries and hopes and dreams and so on that other people have when they read about ancient times. To say ancient times, really, those problems are still with us. We are still people. We're kind of the same. Context changed a little bit, but really it's very similar. And you see yourself in these problems. These graduates that are really dialed in and seem to be getting most out of their course and their career planning, they just take a lot about them. They learn a lot about themselves from their readings. Here's a practical example of that. If you were, say, to look at that Where's Wally puzzle, but you hadn't a clue what the characteristics of that target were, it would be very hard to find your target. On an actual daily basis, say, for example, for myself in the careers office, people come to me all the time and they would ask me things like, in career planning talks, what are my options? What should I do job-wise? What job is right for me? Solid questions, and thankfully we've loads of options for them. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of options. Thing is though, whether I present somebody with 1,000 options or just one, often they don't know what to do with that list of options when I present to them because they haven't a good handle on themselves. They don't know what their own interests are, what they like, what they don't like, which problems they find to be important. Like, for example, their values, their interests, their abilities, their skills, other personal characteristics. They don't know what sort of life they want to lead yet. That's fine. So usually what we do is I would talk to them about their subject, what they're learning from that, which problems they see through their subject, their learning, and then you can use that then to help them with their self-development, which is fantastic to give an idea of like what sort of characteristics they might actually like for themselves so they can search for stuff effectively. On your CV and in interviews, of course, people will ask you about this kind of stuff on the board at the moment. Stuff like that looks like it's easy to answer, but actually most people, when I interact with them, can't answer those questions. How much do you want to get paid, even? What are your goals? Do you have any goals? What are your top 5 interests? What exactly is a value, is usually what people ask me when I say, do you have any values at the moment? That stuff is fantastically useful for your career development, and you should be able to see a lot of that through your studies and classics. And that helps you develop, and that helps you focus, and that helps you pursue an occupation that aligns with some of these. It's usually quite personal and different depending on each person. Second last slide, I think. Third last slide. When somebody comes to me and says, or it has a conversation about options, this is a very broad starting point. This picture on the screen is a category view of options for graduates. See up on the right, for example, further study options, and then over on the far side, the purple, graduate job options, employment options, and a few other bits and pieces. Let me just run through this with you real quick first, because it might be relevant to you regardless of your studies, regardless of your subject choice, classics or not. Further study within your area after your degree. you can always go on to do further study, specializing in something like further into classics, which might be nice. Equally though, just so you know, there is another category there in red as well, further study in a different area. You could thoroughly enjoy study classics all the way through your undergrad and then decide later on, you know what, great, now I'd like to do something else. You can do another subject at, say, master's level from scratch with no background in it later on, if you like. That's nice because it allows you to try things, test out a degree, and then move to something else if you want. Equally, I think you can do classics at postgrad level if you don't have a background in it as well. So it works both ways. Just look at the top left. See the purple ones? Graduate employment. So these would be jobs that come into the careers office all the time. Maybe you see them on LinkedIn and whatever as well, where employers say, we would like you to have a degree in subject X before you can do this job. That's the very top one. A job with your subject area. But there's another category there as well, you can see. A lot of employers say, do you know what, we don't care what subject you studied at undergraduate level. They want to know that you did a degree. They'll ask you how well you did, whether you enjoyed it. But then they say, look, that's fine. Come to us. We'll train you for what you need to know. And off you go. I'll show you some examples of both of those now in a minute. 30% of the jobs that come into the careers office every single year are for graduates of any discipline. That means any subject, any course. So you don't need 30%. You need one job at the end of this. No matter what you choose, as long as you choose something that you like, so that you work hard at it and do well, employers love that. There's other stuff there. Just for time, I'm going to skip quite past them and show you some examples of jobs that classics graduates have gone on to from Maynooth. I'm using a LinkedIn example because you can see this yourself. If you want to go home, go onto LinkedIn, put in Maynooth University plus classics, and you'll start to see a lot of profiles coming up, and you can see their employer name and their job title. I'm just putting up the job title now. You'll see lots of examples here. Some of them, like that very first one, would be a graduate job. That last one, graduate job. And then throughout there, there's like loads of different director jobs in there. You see the way there's some really senior ones. Notice the way there's no classics, the word, in any of these titles. It's the skill set that you get from your degree that enables people to go into these things. The title isn't the match here. It's also usually that these people have an interest in working in those areas because those areas allow them to solve certain problems. And those problems are usually paying them quite well actually to solve. It's nice. There are hundreds more examples of this if you want to look on LinkedIn. I just thought worth showing you because there's such a variety there. From our own survey, we measure where the graduates go 9 months out. This is the last slide. Which gives people a little bit of time to get into the job market, but it's not 20 years. But even so, there's on the blue here, about 3/4 of them are working within the 9 months. They're working to the tune of 35,000 usually. Master's students, maybe a bit more than that, up to the 42, 43,000 this year, 9 months out, which isn't bad. You could do a bit of damage with that. And the one in orange there says further study. So that's people that have chosen to go on to do maybe further study, like a master's in something, usually by choice. So you see the people out traveling is in grey and unemployed is like 3% or something. Some nice figures there. That last little thing at the very bottom, last point, 36 paid over 80,000. That's a higher proportion than the social science category. That's a higher proportion than the science and engineering category. Nice to know. Art students do well. Because I think we're out of time, so I'll stop there. Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you
very much.
Good luck. I'll be around for questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's introduce our next speaker today, and it is a Maynooth graduate, Teresa Ryder. Teresa graduated with an MA in Classics from Maynooth in 2013. She's a writer of fiction, memoir, poetry, plays, and essays. She's a recipient of the Molly Keane Creative Writing Award, Beltane Emerging Artist Award, and selected for the Irish Writers' Centre Northern Soul Roadshow 2024, which is an ongoing collaboration of 20 Irish Writers' Centre aimed to promote the arts across borders. She's a professional member of the Irish Writers' Centre, the World Forum, the Irish Writers' Union, and Irish PEN. She's currently working on a memoir aided by an English literature bursary from the Arts Council of Ireland. Welcome, Teresa.
Thank you. Now, hi guys. Thanks to Cassetta for inviting me back to Maynooth today. We actually were talking earlier, we had some of our lectures in this actual building, so it's memory lane. Everything I do is scripted, so heavy on the paperwork here. So yes, Teresa Ryder is my name. I graduated in 2013, as you just heard, and I am a writer. So how do you give yourself that title? So something Stephen King said in an interview, and this allowed me to take up the title of writer when I taxed the car and paid the electric bill with the first money I earned from writing. The second quote was my mantra while I was writing my memoir, which is about my time as assistant to J.P. Dunleavy, but the part that involves him are not my worst moments. So I bear that in mind when I'm writing. Excuse me. I was asked in a recent interview what I would rescue from a fire, and my hands would be full. This is just a few of the books that I kept and treasure and still use from my classics days. Don't store your books like this. This is temporary. There's a new bookshelf being built for them. And I remember some of my fellow students studying, I think geography was one of them. They were being asked to pay for books that cost €100 plus. And these are a tenner a pop, and some secondhand. That, of course, isn't the only reason to study classics. So my journey into the ancient world. As a first-year undergraduate with no formal education to back me up, I had no idea what to study. But I knew I wanted to find out more about Greek and Roman civilization. And way back when I was at school in London, it was a subject that only the elite schools were taught it. So I had a sense of missing out. Nowadays, with the movement for classics for all in the UK, it's much more widespread in schools. Sadly, not so much in Ireland. But that means that most of us come to classics at the same level. In Maynooth, I also took anthropology and history in first year. These were very large departments, and as a shy, mature student with severe imposter syndrome, I was happy to hide among the masses, not to raise my head to be seen or my voice to be heard. But it was the classics department lecturers that got to know me and drew out my strengths. And there was always an open door if you had an issue, encouragement for ideas and praise for success. And it was praise from the lecturers on my writing ability that certainly helped me with my choices after my degree. And that's why being part of a smaller department can be of benefit. That guidance and personal attention to my particular skills, along with a passion for the subject, had me take on the master's programme. I love the diversity of the subject matter offered with classics. My master's thesis focused on political history at the time of Alexander the Great. And I had taken a specific treaty to analyse as the basis for my project. And I remember being told by my supervisor that at that point in time, I was probably the authority on that particular issue. I went home to cook dinner for my kids, but I put that in my back pocket. 2 years after my master's graduation, one of my classics lecturers came to Waterford to attend my first writing award. So once you're part of this department, you stay. After my master's, I continued writing on my thesis subject, but this time as a novel. The work was inspired by this short piece that I had used as a reference in my thesis. It's a section of a law court speech referring to Athens at the time of the Battle of Chaeronea, the event which begins my novel. Here, Lycurgus is trying to show the worst of situations, and he chose to set this scene. Free women could be seen crouching at the doors in terror, inquiring for the safety of their husbands, fathers, or brothers, offering a spectacle degrading to themselves and to the city. That's the worst of scenes. The battle had happened a few years previous to his account. Did he witness these terrified women, or was he at the battle with the other men? If not, why not? Was he exaggerating for effect, as lawyers do? What was in it for him? Did he have a personal vendetta? And who were these free women? My novel research was shaping up to be the same as my degree research, and I was ready for it. I built this work up over the years. It now sits at 97,000 words, and it's always been in the background while I worked on other writing projects, but now it's complete and going through final edits. So look out, J.K. Rowling, I'm coming. I heard this term portfolio career and adopted it. That sort of summed me up at the time. After graduating from Maynooth, I took some time out with my family and considered my options. And all through my degree, I'd volunteered as an adult literacy tutor. Having been a mature student, I was keen to guide other late learners into study, and I thought that would be my career path. I began teaching in further education. Then I took an opportunity to start my own business in Cork City. I applied my research skills and found out what would work in that location. I linked up with sustainable business initiatives in MTU and UCC, walking their halls with the confidence of a classics graduate. I opened an education centre, internet, printing, coffee, close to UCC. It was very busy, and with a focus on being environmentally friendly. I linked up with other businesses and devised bespoke computer skills courses for their staff. This led to other groups, such as visiting German students from disadvantaged backgrounds. I had one group of Polish civil servants who wanted to bring back insights for Polish students visiting Ireland, such as how to access education, jobs, using social welfare, public transport, getting a library ticket, but none of them spoke English. It took a few translation software trials with a Polish customer to get it right before we began. Microsoft skills workshops were popular, and mature students who wanted to up their computer skills before starting college, coming down from UCC. I held culture night and poetry day events, spoken word open mic nights. I held writing workshops, and we had drama groups. And then UCC invited me onto their Learning Neighbourhood Steering Group, and I was selected to take on their pilot programme that gave me the title Community Mentor for Education. And all of these are worthy endeavours. But more exciting for me was that I wrote about my experiences. I wrote blogs, fiction, op-eds for newspapers, articles for journals, essays, plays, poetry. I created a short course on ancient Athens for UCC and delivered that in person until COVID restrictions forced us online. That was tricky, to get a class to perform a section from Antigone with the choral movement when you're on screen. I taught creative writing online, and I had my first play performed in Cork Arts Theatre. I left Cork when COVID closed the business. I took a job as a senior quality auditor. I think I saw that on the slide, the LinkedIn slide. Here my classics training came to the fore, and I was well suited to the work, which required careful analysis and concise reporting. I enjoyed it, but I reduced my hours to give more space to my writing. Then, with a body of work behind me and a few writing accolades, I was granted a bursary from the Arts Council of Ireland and was able to write full-time. I now have a memoir and 2 novels ready for publication, and 2 more novels and some plays in development. I also keep working on poetry, short stories, and non-fiction. And if I have a little gripe, I'll send something into the newspapers. So, writing. As a student, I was always intrigued by the ancient theatre. I loved the plays, the close analysis of the tragedies and comedies in context of their time, but also the significance of its influence on the audience, such that Plato and Aristotle examined it in political philosophy. I was drawn to modules such as the ancient novel, that was in this building, and death and tragedy. As a fiction writer, I questioned who turned up to these performances. How did they engage with the play? How was it performed? What did they eat? How long could you sit on a stone seat? I wanted details to go behind the scenes, so I did. And a central element of my first novel was a performance of Medea, which was great fun to write as somebody in the audience. But not all my work is focused on the ancient world, but often when considering new work or developing a plot, I ask, what would Clytemnestra do? Maybe not. What would Medea do? No. What would Antigone do? Maybe. And I hope you get to discover these characters and see how they might influence you. Aside from writing, I'm currently a guest editor for a journal. I run the fiction competition for a literary festival, and I am public relations officer for a drama festival. As Cassetta mentioned, I'm a professional member of the Irish Writers Union and the Irish Writers Centre, which enables me to take part in the Words Forum, which addresses the issues around the arts in Ireland, and to be part of Irish PEN, the Irish section of an international organisation that aims to defend the right to responsible freedom of speech. If you study classics, you will find this principle lies at the core of early democracy, and it still needs defending. A writer needs to be thick-skinned, bounce off rejections and declines, take the criticism and use it to critique. But there is no greater qualified critic in a professional sense, than a classics graduate. The skills and confidence you will gain from a classics degree enable you to know your voice and assert your opinion in many arenas. I was fortunate to be invited to take part in an award-winning initiative of the Irish Writers Centre called Women Ex Borders, where women writers from all counties of Ireland met to read their work. This was an annual event until the pandemic, and a great opportunity to meet other writers. Earlier this year, I was awarded a place on the Northern Soul Roadshow, which is an ongoing collaboration of 20 Irish writers who aim to promote the arts across borders. That began with a series of workshops that we did for 6 weeks, and then we had a big promotional event in Belfast, and then we got let loose. So we just keep collaborating with each other on different works and hopefully promote that work. And it is important to get involved. If you have an interest in writing, I would advise the following. Learn your craft, take courses and workshops where you can, find your unique selling point and give workshops. Support other writers by attending book launches, plays and readings, conduct interviews, give interviews, use your time efficiently, use your well-honed writing skills on as many platforms as you can to get recognition. This will lead to invitations to speak or to review books, write articles, attend festivals. You'll be commissioned for work. Be bold, be confident in your ability, be careful in your choices, be aware AI is here. There's a lot of jobs out there for writers who want to feed that hungry beast. And in Maynooth, there's an excellent drama society. If you want to get a feel for stage work, just join up. You can write plays, you can direct plays, you could bring classics back to the stage. Now, studying classics. This is pertinent to me, but it will bring you worthy workplace skills, such as a heightened ability to analyse, research, report, present and debate. It will give you a wider view of the world and a respect for other cultures. And as a fully aware citizen of the world, you will be acknowledged as an authority on the history and culture that shaped our society. You will be assertive in your opinions and confident in your value. You will have learned to think for yourself and not be boxed in by narrow opinions. These are skills recognised and valued by employers. And we talk about transferable skills, and it's true that the diversity of subject matter can give the classics graduate entry to many careers. The reality is these are skill sets that enable you to hit the ground running, whatever you choose to do. I undertake a lot of historical research, and I find my classics degree opens doors and conversations in various institutions. And when researching agents and publishers, I found many with classics backgrounds. Such unique common ground is helpful. There was an insightful moment when I had to attend court a few days before exams, I think in third year, not criminal. I sat outside the courtroom reading Medea, studying and making notes, and a passing barrister said, "Oh, the judges will love you, they all have classics backgrounds." But do not take from that you can use your classics superpowers to sway judges. Classics has given me a wealth of subject matter and the authority to write confidently. The reality of how encompassing classics is came through with the engagement from participants of my UCC short course. They all had input from their own fields or areas of interest. Retired academics, a bus driver, a film buff, a solicitor, an art historian, a rugby player. We spoke about ancient texts and modern movies. Classics draws the threads of our various lives together to attempt to make sense of the world, and we need to continue to do that in such crucial times in world affairs. So, getting involved. Writing is a solitary occupation, but it serves you well, as in any undertaking, to immerse yourself fully in the literary world. I'll mention a couple of these organisations. Actually, if you ever are dabbling in writing and want to know what to do with it, writing.ie is a great place to start. There's so much information. It's run by a lady called Vanessa Fox O'Loughlin, who writes under the pen name of Sam Blake. She's writes crime thrillers. Good place to go if you're looking to start out. Fighting Words sounds ferocious, but they're quite lovable. They describe themselves as a creative writing organisation established in 2009 by Roddy Doyle and Sean Love in Dublin. Our aim is to help students of all ages to develop their writing skills and to explore their love of writing. All programmes are free of charge and offered in locations all over Ireland, so check them out. And Irish Pen, their aims are, as they say, defending the right to responsible freedom of expression, to promote literature in and about Ireland, both nationally and internationally, to foster international understanding through the appreciation of literature. There's a great interest in the classical world, in literature, film, theatre, gaming. With a classics degree, you may be called on as a consultant, something I did recently for work on Greek myths. My classics training has given me confidence in having a voice, to write without fear, but to understand possible repercussions, to have the courage to assert my beliefs, to call it out when something isn't right, to have authority in historical and cultural knowledge, and with that to value freedom of speech and self-expression. As a student of classics in Maynooth, I developed a deep appreciation for art, language, film, literature and theatre, which has benefited my writing career. I see the influence of the ancient world everywhere. Don't watch a movie with me. And I am fortunate to be able to work it into my creative endeavours. I gave my MA thesis to Maynooth Library as a way of giving something back, and in the hope it will be of use to other students of this engaging and highly valued subject. Studying classics in Maynooth has shaped my career and given me a unique perspective on the wider world, and for that I am grateful and proud to be an alumna of Maynooth Classics. If you choose classics, the door will open onto many avenues. And don't be afraid to have a voice, and don't be afraid of taking twists and turns. You could end up anywhere. I'd like to end with an extract of a poem by the first honorary member of Irish Pen, Ilhan Sami Chumak. And this poem is actually on the London Underground, displayed in full at the moment. Ilhan was arrested as a student aged 22, and he spent 30 years, or has spent 30 years in Turkish prison, and his expected release last month was denied. Irish Pen have a postcard initiative to send him hope and encouragement. No politics, just joy. So this is an extract, very short, from What I Know of the Sea by Ilhan Sami Chumak, translated by Caroline Stockford. Let each and every spring be yours. May all the mountains tire and arrive here, here at the place where stars have spilled you, where waters flow, the place where you say, curl up on my lap and let birds take flight, in the place where we collected questions such as, what was before words? Thanks for listening, and I wish you all the very best in your academic careers and beyond, and just enjoy what you do. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Teresa. That was great, very inspiring. Our next guest is Ben Morse. Ben is the manager of teaching-related industrial engagement and strategic relations for the School of Geosciences at the University of Edinburgh. A 2012 graduate of Edinburgh MA in Classics, he has previously worked across the university in diverse sections, including Supercomputing Centre, Royal School of Veterinary Studies, College of Arts, the Humanities and Social Sciences, Communications and Marketing, and Student Recruitment and Admissions. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Cosetta, and I'm sorry I couldn't be with you all today in person. So it's lovely to get the chance to speak about sort of my career post classics. I apologise if my cat Orpheus in the bottom right of the slide makes an appearance. You don't have to have a cat with a classical name, and I'm not even responsible for that. We adopted him in 2020, and he already had that name, but it definitely helps. 2 people from my class also have cats called Orpheus. So I'm going to sort of talk through, I'll pick up on a lot of the same points I think that Ian and Teresa have already mentioned. But I'll start with a brief overview of who I am, why I chose classics, what I did, then the deeper dive stuff, my dissertation, and then what I've done in my career and how that relates back to my classical studies. So I can't answer the first question without a quick Les Miserables joke. Apologies, I'm deaf. So classics for me came about because I grew up in South Wales. Not many people know, but South Wales is actually one of the most important Roman sites in all of Britain. But people forget because York gets all the attention, Chester to some extent as well. But there's a place called Caerleon where there are these wonderful Roman baths, which have been then covered over, and they've got this amazing thing. If you get the chance to visit, you really should. There's an amphitheatre at Caerleon. For ages, they thought that this was the site of King Arthur's Round Table because there was this perfectly round monument. And then when they excavated it, they discovered it was actually a Roman amphitheatre. There is the remains of a Roman legionary fort, one of the 3 big ones throughout the UK, the others being at York, Eboracum, Chester, and then Caerleon, or Isca, as it was known to the Romans, or Isca Salorum. There's a wonderful museum, which obviously as a child, going along, having people sort of dressed up in that, and the other things was very exciting. And then a few miles away, very close to the Bristol Channel, is another place called Caerwent. Caerwent is a walled Roman town from much later in the Roman period, when raiders were coming across the Irish Sea from Ireland. And they have this wall that these days, inside the wall is just fields, because the village these days is tiny. But you can see when you walk around the walls how massive this town was. And indeed, in the medieval period, it was the capital of a small kingdom called Gwent. Those of you familiar with the Witcher series of games and books, and indeed TV show now, may recognise the card game named after that. So having grown up surrounded by all of that, I was hooked. I absolutely loved the idea, how have these people thousands of years ago created all of this, and it's still there to this day. So initially I was really, really excited by the ability to sort of look into that and more of the kind of archaeology side of it. But then I got the opportunity to start digging more, and I discovered the amazing literature that there is. And there are innumerable amazing translations, but I was really fortunate to be given the opportunity through the initiatives that Teresa spoke about to study Latin and then ancient Greek, initially before, and then really getting deeply into them at university. I applied to the classics degree at Edinburgh. It's why I came here, and have stayed here ever since I was 18. Edinburgh is known as the Athens of the North, which is a really apt thing. Carlton Hill, just off Princes Street, has a half-complete reconstruction of the Athenian Acropolis. Great place to study, and really fortunate to have an amazing department there. And as you can see from what I studied within that, we looked at lots of different parts of the literature. I studied ancient history, accounts of ancient Persia from very, very wide sources such as Herodotus, who one of the original historian. Indeed, his inquiries, Historiae, is what gives us the modern word history. But also others, and sort of unknown ones, such as Ctesias. I was very fortunate there. Literally 3 months before the start of my third year, one of the professors, sorry, he was then not a professor, he's now a professor, published a book called Persica, which was this. And in my third year, 3 months after the publication of this book, I studied a course based around that material. And again, being at that sort of cutting edge of this, no one's been talking about Ctesias for hundreds of years. Really since the Byzantine period in some cases, because we have such poor such poor amounts of his work left. And that was really, really exciting to be able to do that. And, you know, some of these fragments are things that they're literally coming out of places like Pompeii, and new information is coming back to light after thousands of years, which was incredible and I really, really enjoyed. I was slightly different to Teresa in my approach, and indeed quite different to a lot of my classmates as well. A lot of classicists focus on that literature, and especially kind of the sort of writing and the poetry, and that I was really drawn to the prose and the historians especially. I really, really enjoyed Tacitus, Suetonius, Xenophon, and that all sort of filters into what I then ended up really focusing on. What I really enjoyed about things like Tacitus and Suetonius is they are historians writing in the early Roman Empire, and a lot of their work focuses on members of the imperial family earlier in the imperial period. And there's all these sort of hints that you can start drawing out from the texts, where is there implicit criticism of the current emperor being hidden within text about a historical emperor, and drawing all these things out and comparing and contrasting the sources and understanding, you know, the different levels of them in society. Tacitus is the nephew of Agricola, who was involved in the conquest of Britain and the putting down of the Druidic revolt on Mona or Anglesey. He's very, very high-born. He's got those connections, and the differences, I really enjoyed that. Now, that's something that historians will do in any period. But what I really enjoyed about the classical side of that is we have so few sources left, and working out how these people were writing these things hundreds of years in some cases after the events which they're describing. And that was something that I really, really got involved with. And like Teresa was saying, the critical and analytical skills you're picking up, and also Ian was saying, those are things that really become important in a career, in just general discourse. Coming across things like the Catilinarian conspiracy, which was Cicero's finest hour, depending on who you listen to. There's discourse around Trump at the moment and the 6th of January insurrection, quote unquote, potentially, which there's a lot of parallels between that and the Catilinarian conspiracy, and this man called Catiline, who Cicero accused of having tried to overthrow the Roman state, and all these things. We think that we're going through them for the first time. We aren't. And as a wise man once said, those who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. So many things like this come back and back and back again. And having appreciation of these things can be a really, really nice way of sort of seeing the modern world through a different lens and be able to analyze these things. And plus, in the modern world, unlike in the ancient world, we actually have too much information sometimes. You know, you go on Facebook, you go on the search engine, you can get so many different things about one topic, and being able to have those skills from especially a more limited pool of sources to pick things apart can be a really, really interesting exercise for me anyway. There was loads else I wanted to study and I just didn't have space for in my degree. I made choices. I don't regret those, but at the same time, there's so many more things I wish I could have studied in much, much greater detail. So then, what did I go on to do for the sort of culmination of my studies? I was really intrigued by a man called Lucius Flavius Arrianus. Now, he lived in the 2nd century AD. He, despite the name, was in fact Greek ethnically, lived and was born in Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, the Aegean coast thereof. And he is in fact one of the most important writers of that period and is very poorly known, actually. He was friends with the Emperor Hadrian, as in Hadrian's Wall. He was a military commander. He was a politician. He was a consul of Rome. Later in life, he was an archon at Athens as well. And I really got engaged with him initially because he is the best source for the history of Alexander the Great. And obviously Alexander the Great, 450 years earlier. Clearly, he is using sources, but many of the sources that he is using are lost to us. Sadly, so many of these texts were. But his survived. He's also the only source for the teachings of Epictetus, who was an important philosopher of the period. And this got me really interested. And I started diving more into this. And then for my undergraduate dissertation, I was speaking to my supervisor that I wanted to work on something around Arrian, and I was really interested in sort of his place in society and how these things sort of came about. And he introduced me to the concept called prosopography. Now, within classics, that is a very niche field. It is not well studied. It is becoming increasingly easy with use of technology, maths, data science, statistics, in what's called modern prosopography. And what this is in the ancient world, we know a lot about many people, but we never have a complete biography. It's very, very rare. Julius Caesar, Cicero are two of the sort of best known examples. We have their whole lives. But other people, we know what course they must have taken, but especially once you get into the imperial period, things get difficult. So I mentioned Arrian was a consul at Rome. We know that after that, he went on to be the governor of a place in the very sort of borders of Turkey, Armenia, and he fought off an invasion while there of a tribe called the Alani, or in English, we often call them the Alans, which I constantly imagine a group of people all going, Alan, Alan, Alan. Yeah. Arrian is a great case study here because he's an ethnic Greek, came through the Roman Empire, and there was increasing research at the time that I was working where the ethnic Greeks under the Roman Empire, the normal schema didn't quite work. People were seemingly getting offices later in life. And in the case of Arrian, people were using the fact that there's a guy talking about him in the 160 ADs as being a very, very old consul, and people assuming that there must be two guys called Arrian. There can't be this guy called Arrian. He can't have known Hadrian in the 120s as an adult and still been alive in the 160s when he talked to Galen. And Galen recounts this man because he used to do that because he was hard of hearing. Well, that indicates a really old man. And people were saying that it wasn't possible. There must have been two consuls called Arrian, and he was the son or the father of one. And actually, when you try and realign these things using other evidence and building a statistical picture based on other people from that period, you can actually find that, no, it's entirely possible. If he was a young man in the 120s, knew Hadrian, and then once Hadrian's emperor and more established, he gets made what's called a suffect consul. Basically, he's consul for 3 months of the year instead of a full year. And we know the 3 months because we have brick stamps. Brick stamps means he must have been consul between about June and September, because that is when they put the bricks, the clay bricks, out to dry in the hot sun. So they're using this archaeological evidence, we knew that, but we didn't know what year. They don't put a year on it, unlike the bricks in sort of old houses here, which tell you what year they were built. The Romans' way of doing dates was the year that these two people were consul, which when you're having up to 8 people being consul a year in the imperial period gets very confusing. And so we just didn't know that. And people had suggested as early as the early 120s, people had suggested as late as the 140s, and we had all these gaps that we were trying to fill to know where he was. We still don't 100%. I've got my theories, but yeah, it's a wonderful way of drawing all this evidence from different places together, and I really enjoyed that. So what happened next? I have these ideas. I want to go and study more, and yes, that is me. On my graduation day with some colleagues from the university student recruitment and admissions department. I graduated from my undergraduate. I started saving up to do further studies. I was aiming to do a PhD. Life happened and the funding wasn't available at that time for what I was trying to study. Prosopography was 5 years later, it really sort of exploded as a field, but then it was much more minor. And I then used what I'd been saving up for a PhD to buy a flat, and then got my cat, Orpheus, met my wife, got married, and here we are today. And yeah, I lost the afro when I went professional, although the beard has returned. That's a very recent development. Do I regret that? No, I've really enjoyed it. And it's what I've drawn out from my classics background, I think, which has really sort of enabled me to enjoy my career and have the career that I've had, even though I've worked at a vet school and I've worked at a supercomputing centre for 7 years, and I'm now in the School of Geosciences. I joined Geosciences 6 months ago, in fact, 6 months ago today. I'm now working in climate change. I have had to learn a whole new area in the last 6 months. I'm working in business development now, which previously I wasn't working in business development. I was working with students much more. So I've had to learn all these things. I've had to make connections. I've had to learn these different areas, read a lot, and I've done that. I think what's really good about classics as a degree field, and a lot of social sciences will give you this, don't get me wrong, but I think classics is particularly good for it. Most classics degrees are not massive. You're not often in classes of more than 100 people. A lot of the classes focus on small group discussions, and that's really valuable because, okay, as we say where I'm from in Wales, I was vaccinated with a gramophone needle. I could talk for Britain, if not Earth, as you probably are starting to get. But that is a really important skill set to have. I've spent the last nearly 10 years working in sciences. I am married to a scientist. Scientists, they generally interact with people less like that. And you need someone who's going to walk into a room and go, how heavy is a polar bear? Enough to break the ice, to start getting things moving. Things like that are really, really important. And if you don't believe me, I'm not the only one, because my father did the same thing. He studied classics. He then moved to Anglo-Saxon, where he was taught by J.R.R. Tolkien. There's also a small Tolkien nod behind me. That's a Rohan banner. My dad then became an accountant. He then worked at a university as well, becoming a lecturer in accounting and finance in his late 40s. He was a teacher, teaching students in these small group discussions, the very dry subject of accounting, I'll be honest. It's very dry. But that, again, is another career that all of these things from classics that you wouldn't necessarily think you can adopt. So how did classics sort of bring me to this? How did it all come together? You'd be amazed, actually, how studying the ancient languages, which are incredibly grammatical. I think modern languages-wise, German's probably the only one that comes close. Understanding the grammar of those languages not only gives you the building blocks for other languages and makes life a lot easier when you're going and learning other modern languages. Anyone who's got Latin can probably read modern Romanian. Couldn't understand a word of it spoken, but modern Romanian is very, very similar to Latin. I do okay with Italian. I'm going to Sicily next week. I'm not great at speaking it, but I can generally understand what's going on a bit. But actually, within English, the understanding of how that language fits together, I treat languages like a mathematical formula. And that's because of that background. It really does help you. And like Teresa was saying, and has had a tremendous career as an author, clearly having that ability makes life so much easier for anything which involves writing. The critical thinking and analysis is a huge skill set. And I think there are too many students these days leaving university on other degree programs where it's possible to get through university sometimes without fully developing those. And I think it's a really important graduate skill. I do a lot of work with companies who tell me what they look for in graduates, both in my previous role for 7 years and my current role. Critical analysis is one of the big ones. Just because somebody tells you something, can you go away and work out if it's true or not? Just because somebody tells you something is a way to do it, is it the best way? Asking those questions is a really important skill set. And classics, with many other humanities subjects, is very, very good production of that. Same with constructing an argument. I don't mean you're having an argument down the pub about who the best player is in the local football team. No, I mean, building up that wider construction in a sense. I am very involved in my local community now. The local community is having discussions with the local council about certain developments nearby, taking in all the views of the local community and condensing them into a form which we can then present as rational, not emotional, as thought through, not verbal diarrhea. That's really important. And again, that's something which, whether or not these developments happen, could affect the community that I live in and plan to live in for many years to come. I also do a lot of singing outside work. Singing church Latin. I mean, church Latin sounds nothing like classical Latin, but singing church Latin is great. Do a lot of that. And again, whenever people are trying to work out what the stuff we're singing actually means, generally, who's the person in rehearsals they turn to? It's me. I also, through that, had the opportunity to sing at the Vatican in Rome back 2013, which was a life-changing opportunity. I don't think I'll ever get that again. Working in the sciences as well, there's so many words that come up which I don't know the word in English necessarily, but it's made up of 2 or 3 classical words. So somebody approached me at a conference last Wednesday and asked me about lithareg, which is something about stone and sort of fragments and the layers of rock. I'm not a geologist. I have no idea about that. But because I knew the the Greek words that those things came from, I was able to sort of go, well, it's something like this. And in the context, then they could make sense of that. But the other thing, as Ian and Teresa said, I just enjoyed it. And, I'm not here to tell you that you should all do classics. I'd love it if you did, but do what's interesting. And if this has sounded interesting, great. If some of the other presentations sound great, but that is the number one thing for me. It's something that you've got to get through those essays in your 3rd year when you just like to go to sleep. You've got to get through the reading. Every degree has reading. And doing something like, I'm going to wail on accounting again, but my dad has given me permission. Doing something like accounting, which you maybe aren't interested in because you think it'll get you a job, it probably will. But would you rather do a degree of a subject you're really interested in for 4 years, or a degree in a subject that you're really interested in for 4 years? Because trust me when I say, most people I know who work as accountants didn't study accounting. So it's not like it prevents you having that career. And I think that's me. Some more pictures of the cat, as he A, hasn't made an appearance, but B, I'm hoping some of you are like the cat, the right-hand photo, a little bit more attentive. But if any of you have gone to sleep, as in the other 2 pictures, I completely understand. But thank you very much, and happy to take any questions that do come up.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ben. That was informative and a lot of fun as well. And I think it's great to see the diversity of career paths and experiences of people. It's really inspiring and interesting, and it's also validating, I suppose, the same key points that we're all saying here. Our next speaker is Pamela Moran. Pamela is a senior publisher at Thomson Reuters Round Hall, commissioning editor with responsibility for driving both the Irish front list and Sweet and Maxwell's private client list for the UK. She studied Maynooth from 2001 to 2007, completing her undergraduate degree in English and Greek and Roman civilization before pursuing a 2-year MA in Ancient Classics, alongside which she also completed a 3-year degree in the Ancient Greek language. Pamela has worked in publishing since her graduation from Maynooth, and we're going to say goodbye to our Gori students who are leaving us. Thank you for coming. Thank you. So welcome, Pamela. Thank you very much.
God, I really cleared the room there. Hi, everyone. I don't have any notes. I'm going to wing it a little bit today. Well, I'm not, because I have slides. But I'm really happy to be out here, and I'm really grateful that I was invited out. I realized with horror when I was sitting down to do these slides that it's actually 23 years this week since I started here. So 23 years ago this week, I moved up here with a backpack and a prayer, not having any idea what was to come, knowing nobody as well, because all of my friends, for whatever reason, I'm from Mayo, which I'll mention in a minute, all of my friends either went to Sligo or Galway, and I decided to cross the country. So I came here quite a long time ago. So a little bit of background about me. I went to school in Mayo. I'm from County Mayo. And unlike Ben, who was speaking before me, I actually had no classical background coming to college. So I absolutely loved English, and primarily that's actually what I came to Maynooth to do. I chose to do an arts degree. I actually put it on my change of mind form. I didn't even have Maynooth on my original CAO application. And I came here kind of not tunnel vision, but English was my love. I loved reading, I loved writing, I loved poetry, composition, literature. That was my drive and my focus in my degree. And then I came here to start, and within the first couple of weeks of being at Maynooth, I attended those talks where you're still trying to pick your subjects. If you do an arts degree, you get maybe a couple of weeks to kind of hone in on your subjects. And I decided to check out Greek and Roman civilization. I saw that this was a topic that was being run, and I'd always loved history in school, so I thought, okay, I'll check this out. And someone called Dr. Kieran McGuirty, who I see is here, was speaking to a bunch of people about Greek and Roman civilization and what it was about and what it entailed. And that really grabbed me. And I thought, okay, I've always loved history. I don't really know that much about ancient history. I had glanced, kind of Egyptian history maybe in secondary or primary school, maybe a little bit for the junior cert cycle, but leaving cert history, at least when I was doing it, was very much like modern European, modern Irish history. So I said I'd give it a go. And I also took up philosophy as well, because I figured that would tie in pretty well. So those are my 3 subjects. I graduate in 2004 with a Bachelor of Arts in English and Greek and Roman civilization. Now, by the time I graduate, I have very firmly switched over in my mind to wanting to pursue classics as a postgraduate. I did enjoy English, but classics completely took over once I started my degree. So by the time I've graduated, I know that I want my postgraduates to center around classics. So I choose to do a 2-year master's in Greek and Roman civilization with a focus on Greek antiquity. And at this point, critically, I also started to study the language of the ancient Greeks. So while I was an undergraduate, the opportunity came up to take up either Greek or Latin. And at that time, I had studied language for my Leaving Cert. I actually did French to Junior Cert and German to Leaving Cert. I wasn't a mad fan of languages, and actually I did well at them, but only because I had to really work hard at language in school. It never came naturally to me. So as an undergraduate, I was like, no, I don't think so. Might drag down my mark, take a lot of time. You know, I'm just going to concentrate on the literature and the history. Once I came to be a postgraduate, it was kind of essential, really, that I took up a language. So I decided to take up Ancient Greek. And I studied that for 3 years alongside my master's. And actually, as Ben kind of inferred there in his chat, having the background of German grammar really, really stood to me when I came to do Ancient Greek. But moreover, I was so much more interested in language at this point, because now it was giving me, I wasn't just learning a language because I wanted to get X amount of points in my leaving and then get into a certain course. I was reading Homer, I was reading Platonic dialogue, I was reading Greek tragedy, Euripides, Sophocles, all of these amazing works I was reading in the original language. And what you learn if you do ever come to study an ancient language, or any language for that matter, is that when we're relying on people's translations, we're really relying on their interpretation of a work. It's quite something to be able to go back, to understand and interpret an ancient language and to read it for yourself as it was originally written. So personally, I got an awful lot of unexpected joy from that particular study. I also, as a postgraduate, I became a tutor. So when you come to college, the vast majority of your learning is going to be through lectures. Well, I presume it still is. I haven't been here in a while, but like, the majority of your week is going to be spent in an auditorium or a classroom like this one, and there's someone at the top of the room and they're going to be lecturing at you and you're going to be taking notes. Tutorials are a smaller forum where everybody gets to sit together in a room, maybe 10, 15 people, and you get to talk about what you studied, you get to revise it, you get to do exercise on it, ask questions, chat. I became, as a tutor, you kind of host or chair these sessions. So you're the person at the top of the room. You're going over what people have learned in lectures, yes, but you're also trying to lead discussion and trying to get people to discuss their thoughts on the matter and so forth, and kind of chair discussions around that. So I did that as a postgraduate as well. And that came in really handy in terms of, like this, being able to stand at the top of a room and address a large number of people, which is really important in my career, which I'll get to now. So, God, these slides are so wordy. I'm sorry, I should have put in some cat pictures. So I completed my MA in language degree in 2007. And at this point, I have two choices. I can continue in academia, which I would have loved to have done. Like a large part of me did want to do that for a long time. But a PhD is a long road. At this point, I've been, nearly 7 years in Maynooth. I really don't want to leave, but the real world is calling. I've got to make money. I've got to think about what I want to do with my life. You remember I came to school or came to college wanting to do English, and tied in with that was a love of publishing. I'd always had a kind of a fascination with the publishing world, with the job, not just of writing, but of editing and publishing. I've no idea where to begin. I have a classics degree and an English degree, and I've no idea how to break into this. So what I did was I went on to an Irish publishing website, and I found a little section of it where there's obviously loads of sections where people are looking for advertising jobs, looking for you to come and work for them. And there's a big host of like requirements and experience required. What I did was I went onto the section of the website where you could advertise yourself, and I uploaded a profile, and I just said, look, this is who I am. This is what I've been reading for the last 7 years. Would love to break into publishing. Here's a little bit about me. And within a couple of weeks, I had an email from a wonderful woman who was a literary agent and a writer, who contacted me and said she would like to meet because she was looking for an editorial assistant, and it sounded like I might fit the bill. So I went and did an interview with her, and one of the first things she said to me is, what really jumped out at me from your CV, from what you had written about yourself, from what you said, was the classics element of it. She was like, you read ancient Greek? Like, what? Why? How? Tell me about it. That was something that had made me immediately stand out. She ended up hiring me. I became an editorial assistant, and that's where I learned about the nuts and bolts of publishing. So that's where I learned about typesetting, copy editing, proofreading, the production of books, binding. I also learned about marketing books. I also learned about interpreting proposals, all of that I did with her. And then in 2008, less than a year later, due to her personal circumstances, she became unwell at the time. She had to wrap up her side of the business temporarily, and all of a sudden I'm out of a job. So I've left college, I found what I think is my dream job, it's going really well, and then suddenly life steps in and I don't actually have a job again. So this is a bit of a crossroads for me. Again, I'm facing maybe having to move home because I'm still living up here, I'm paying rent, now I've got no job, figuring out how to try to stay within publishing. Actually, you'll see from the slide there, I did a few months in the Fees and Grants office here in Maynooth, working there while I was kind of between roles, which was an amazing experience as well. Then I saw a company called Thomson Reuters based in Dublin who were advertising for a legislation editor. Now, I've absolutely no legal background whatsoever. And to this day in my role, when I sit down and meet new authors or meet new people, one of the first things they'll ask me is, where did you study law? And I didn't. I don't have a legal background, but I'm now the commissioning editor for the Irish list for Thomson Reuters in Ireland, which is a legal publisher. I applied for this position and I was sent straight away an exam by the hiring manager. And the exam, or the test, or whatever you want to call it, it was part of the kind of figuring out if you're cut out for the job. I'm just chancing my arm here, throwing my CV into this. I have no idea what's going to happen. I get sent this exam, and it's to consolidate government legislation. Okay, now I barely know what a statute looks like at this point. So I saw this and I thought, what's the point? Like, I'm in over my head here. I need to just accept that this isn't going to suit me. And then I kind of looked at it again and I took my time and I said to myself, hang on a second, you've just spent 3 years reading ancient Greek. You learned an alphabet that you didn't understand 2 years prior, 3 years prior. You can sit down and interpret complex material. You can sit down and you can apply the skill set that you learned there to something like this. So I did. I sat down, I went through it methodically, I thought it out, I did the exam, I got the job. So I remained legislation editor with them until 2016, and I really loved this work. I actually ended up consolidating government legislation like the exam, but I became the house editor for a range of books and journals. So I'm copy editing, I'm proofreading, I'm typesetting. Just like with my first professional role after Maynooth, I walked into that interview room in 2008, and the first thing they said to me was, well, what made you stand out was the classics. Tell us about this ancient Greek. Tell us about the language. Why classics? How come you spent so long at it? That's really different. So again, I'm finding that even though I'm going out into the market, and it's a market that isn't necessarily looking for classicists, it's making me stand out every time on my CV. People are intrigued by it. And if you're trying to get a job and you're going to an employer who has 50 CVs on their desk, you want something to stand out, look a little bit different, seem a little bit different. Make them call you into the room and tell them about it. So that was fine. I was tipping along fine as an editor. I actually loved my job, got really settled, complacent, could have done it forever. And then in 2016, I decided that I needed to push myself a little bit, and our commissioning editor at the time was having a baby. So she was going on mat leave and the opportunity to come up to cover her role. So when you're an editor, it's very much desk-based publishing. So like I said, you're typesetting, you're proofreading, you're editing. When you're commissioning, you're actually the person who brings the books in. So you have to go out and you have to actively commission, or you have to, you're the person who people approach with book proposals. So you're kind of the face of the business almost to prospective authors. And I had thought about it now and again throughout my career, because it's kind of a natural progression for an editor to go into commissioning, but I figured maybe it wouldn't suit me, or it wasn't for me. I didn't really like the idea that I'd constantly be people facing, always in meetings, always out there. But I also thought, look, I have to give it a go. I have to shake things up a bit in my career. So I did. I covered it and I absolutely loved it. It was my dream job, completely unexpectedly. So unfortunately, well, fortunately for her, the woman who had the baby came back. So I did that for about 9 months. And then I ended up leaving Thomson Reuters for a little while. I took a complete pivot and I went to a company called Fidelity International, again in a publishing role, but this time it was much more technical. So I was involved in statutory fund reporting, and instead of authors, it was fund accountants that I was dealing with. Really good experience for 18 months there, but thankfully Thomson Reuters contacted me in 2018 and told me there was a full-time commissioning post. So I went back to them and I remained there to the present day. And I was very happy to go back as well, because I realized that I really missed the human aspect of the commissioning for Reuters, as opposed to the more technical publishing role that I had gone to in Fidelity. So what is my day to day? So I commission the Irish front list for the legal business, as well as a private client list for our UK entity, who are called Sweet and Maxwell. So some of the things that I do every day is I review book proposals. So if you want to write a book for us, I'm the first person that you come to, and you send in your proposal forms and your sample chapters. And I will review that as a starting point before deciding whether or not it's for us and whether to create a business case on it and so forth. I do market research. I have to do detailed financial projections for new titles. I have to identify commercial gaps. I have to have really good knowledge of our competitors in the market, know what they're doing and writing and publishing, and know what else is out there. I have to negotiate terms and contracts, and I have to negotiate contracts with lawyers, which is no mean feat because it's literally their job. So everyone who writes for us, almost everyone who writes for us, is a barrister, solicitor, member of the judiciary. So I have to negotiate all the terms of them writing for us and the contracts. I'm the main point of contact for all of our authors throughout the entire writing process, which in this scenario, and probably most scenarios, can take years. So the people who write for us have full-time jobs. They're, like I said, they're barristers, they're solicitors, they're judges. They might be writing on an area of criminal law that they're an expert in, but by day, they're actually working full-time. So their writing is in the evenings or it's at the weekends. So sometimes it takes years from when they come to me with the proposal to actually getting the book out. And I am their primary contact during those years. So I will have regular meetings with them. I will motivate them to keep writing. I will pressure them to keep writing. So that's a huge part of my job. I have to keep them to deadlines, because we're a commercial entity and we need to publish our books when we say we'll publish our books. So I have to really inspire them to stick to their deadlines and their contractual agreements. And I have to track commercial objectives on the business side all the time, keep up to date with market trends, and ensure that we meet financial targets. So how do classics shape this? Like, what is the interaction between what I do now and what I studied? So skills that are really essential to my career are, I've listed them here, but communication, first and foremost, written and verbal communication. My current role, I sometimes think my emails are like essays in this role. I have to write really long, considered emails, and I have to really, really handle relationship management for the company. So for the most part, my day consists of writing really long emails that are usually composing arguments or trying to persuade someone to do something or trying to get something out of somebody. So the art of language is huge in what I currently do. The art of negotiation, like I mentioned, I do negotiate contracts with authors. So, and I do negotiate, on deadlines and on content and on, whatever we as a business may require from them and vice versa. So negotiation is a really important part of that as well. I have to methodically interpret complex material, just like I was saying earlier. So I never studied law, I never formally studied law, but obviously all of the books that I work on, I could be working on road traffic legislation one day, criminal the next, judicial review, civil procedure, all of these terms that sound kind of foreign, but I have to be able to engage with that material, at least on a superficial level, with a level of competency that I would have developed while I was here at Maynooth studying classics. Public speaking. So as I said, when I was doing my master's, I actually had to do a couple of talks. So we'd give a talk on the dissertation that we were writing, and there'd be a Q&A afterwards. So your peers, your lecturers would all sit in front of you, listen to your paper, and then grill you on it afterwards. So that was really good experience, like standing at a podium like this and speaking to addressing a room. Also the tutoring, like I mentioned earlier, that was really useful as well. In my job now, I regularly have to engage in public. So I have to, we have book launches. So I'll stand up at the beginning, I might introduce the Attorney General or the judge or whoever wrote the foreword, or I have to say a bit about the author. So that kind of part of my job, like I honed all of that while I was here, whether it was tutoring or whether it was presenting. And that's a skill that I very much have brought into my job today. Adaptability, enjoyment to challenges. Like I said, I've entered the legal world with no formal training. Ability to meet deadlines, write large passages of coherent research. I mean, I did a postgraduate dissertation here, which helped with the experience of coherent research and writing large passages, but also even as an undergraduate, every single essay that you compose, you have to plan it, you have to consider it, you have to have your introduction, you have to, you know, methodically go through the information that you're trying to relay. So all of that is experience for the workplace. Application of order, strict legal referencing system onto large bodies of writing. So when you're doing a thesis or a large body of writing, very often all of your citations have to fit a certain style. I can't remember, I think it might have been the Oxford style of referencing that we used when I was doing my MA. But the second I went into the workforce, I realized I was actually, as a copy editor, enforcing a house style onto every single legal document that I was doing. So straight away, what I had sat down and done for all of my referencing in my MA thesis, I was now doing in a real life job, just in a slightly different way. But that experience of having to impose a style and a referencing citation system onto a large body of work was invaluable to me when I started working. And then just research skills. I have to organize market research into coherent bodies of data. I have to do, someone comes to me and they have a book and I think it's great. I have to create a whole business case and financial projections around that and bring it, you know, to management teams much higher up than me who have the financial sign-off or the business sign-off to give it the go-ahead. I have to be persuasive. I have to write. I have to bring people along with me, and I have to communicate well. And every single inch of that was constantly practiced and perfected while I was studying in classics. God, I've really written too much. Other advantages of a classical background in everyday life. So in general, like table quizzes I've put in there. You are going to nail table quizzes if you study classics. Origin of words, mythology, cultural references, countless things from the classical world stick with me that I've picked up from literatures and stories of the ancient world. It's also a really good conversation piece. I, for work, often attend fancy dinners with people I've never met and don't know, and I have to sit at a table, and dinner is pretty long if you don't know people. So you're sitting on a table and you're trying to come up with a common ground, we'll say. And it comes up, like, where did you study law? Well, I didn't. I actually read ancient Greek for years. And immediately, in every setting I've been in, people have been really fascinated by that. They're either closet classicists themselves, or they're really interested. They're like, well, how did you go from that to this? And tell us about yourself, and tell us about your path, and tell us what you did your dissertation on. It's an amazing, I have found anyway, it's an amazing talking point. It's always something people are fascinated by. And I like to think respect, you know, you really do get a lot of respect when you mention that you have studied classics. I had a teacher when I was in secondary school. My history teacher, I remember her very fondly. She used to always drum into us. We had a terrible Leaving Cert exam format. I don't know what it's like now, but for history, you had to write 5 essays in 2 hours or something. Your hand was falling off. And I remember this teacher always drumming into us. If you understand something, you'll remember it. Understanding is the key to remembering. So if you understand how something happened and when it happened, then you'll remember it. My kind of twist on that is that enjoyment is the key to your success. So it's really hard to fail at something you love. If you think that classics is something that you will enjoy, then as Ben said, you know, you're automatically geared to do better in that. There's going to be long hours. There's going to be study periods in the library. There's going to be groups that you don't want to go to. You're tired, you're worn out, you have other commitments and other subjects to carry as well. You want to love this. You want to love what you're doing, because that's that you're setting yourself up for the most success if you pick something that you love. So if you think that you love classics, then don't concern yourself so much with what comes afterwards, because I spent 7 long years defending, for want of a better word, my career, my educational choices. Now, I will say my parents were massively supportive of me from day dot, which was phenomenal. But most of my peers and almost everybody else was like, what are you doing? What are you going to be? What are you going to do? I can hand on heart tell every single one of you that are sitting here today, I love my job. And not that many people are lucky enough to be able to say that. Was it a natural path straight out of classics to go into publishing? No, but I found my way there and I applied everything that I had learned, and I prospered in something I had no formal training in, because I was relying on all of the universal skills that classics will give you while you're studying as a postgrad or an undergraduate. So yeah, the lesson always stuck with me. Take career opportunities, take chances, pivot, go for something you think you might not get. If you have a classical background and you have that universality of you're doing literature, you're studying religion, you're studying languages, you're studying anthropology, sociology, how humans interact, civilization, politics, that is going to set you up with this amazing, well-rounded foundation as a human being to go out into the world and apply yourself to pretty much anything you want to turn your hand to. The love of classics for me has lasted far beyond my studies, so it has really enriched my life. I still, consume literature, film, art that kind of, comes from my love of classics, and that still enriches my life on a day-to-day basis. And then, just in general, and the other speakers would have touched on this as well, any undergraduate degree that you can complete is a really strong indicator of your resilience. It's a really strong indicator that you can apply yourself, that you can stick to deadlines, you can retain information, you can communicate that information, you can manage yourself. When you leave school and you come to college, there's a bit of a jolt, actually, because your mom isn't, well, unless you commute, I suppose, your mom isn't at you in the morning to get out of bed. She's not watching every class you go to. Nobody's ringing home if you haven't shown up for a second period or whatever. It's on you. It's on you at this point to show up, to do the essay, to participate, to get your grades, to get your exams. So the fact, if you can get through an undergraduate qualification and you can meet all of those responsibilities and all of those deadlines, that's going to make you invaluable to any workplace out there. But the last thing I just want to leave you with, and I really if there's anything you're to come away from this today with, is that please, if you think you'll love it, consider doing it. Because for 7 years, I had no idea, and I really mean that. I had no idea what I was going to end up doing. But my answer was always, I don't know, but I love it. And for now, that's enough. And 23 years post wandering onto this campus for the first time, here I am. And I still love my life, I still love my job, and I love that I was here. So, thank you. And good luck.
Emily has been an avid learner all of her life. There is no one definition that I can tell you about her. She completed her BA at Trinity College Dublin, where she also started her PhD before moving into her current field of movement and... Oh, Cosetta!
Hello.
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 Me.
Hi, Emily.
You caught me mid yoga.
That's what you do.
Well,
It's
hello,
lovely to
everyone.
see you.
It's so nice to see you too. It really feels like no time has passed.
So, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. My name's Emily Lefebvre. I am a yoga teacher here in beautiful Vancouver in British Columbia, which incidentally is a hot spot for lots of Irish people these days. I previously had a career or a path in academia in classics. So obviously that's why I'm here talking with you today. But yeah, and Cosetta and I knew each other way
That's
back.
great. We do. We indeed go way back. And we met, I think, in 2009 when I was doing my PhD in Trinity College. Would you like to tell us and our students about your undergraduate path and why did you pick classics? How did that happen?
Okay, so you all might want a little bit of popcorn because I'm going to take this a little bit further back to elementary school to start with, where, and I think it was grade 5, we had this unit where we had to study Greek mythology, and we all get to pick a Greek god or goddess or hero or heroine and learn all about them. And then we had this like big performance for the school, and we did Greek dancing, and it was all very cool. So that sort of like kindled this thing in my brain. Fast forward, high school, I was a turbo nerd. I was learning everything that you could learn. I did all of the sciences, and I know it's a different system in Canada, but all of the sciences, all of the math, French, drama, you name it. I had no idea what I wanted to do because I was interested in everything. So I took a year off after high school, which for me was a really great idea. In that year, I traveled to Ireland for the first time on my own, landed the day before Paddy's Day when I was 18 years old, and was just like, whoa, this place is so fun. And I went to Trinity College to look at the Book of Kells. And as soon as I saw the old library, I was like, huh, this is a pretty cool place. So moving on a little bit, I go back to home and start my undergraduate degree. So it's a different system, right, in Canada, particularly if you want to do an arts degree. They encourage your first year at least to be general studies. So I did 10 completely different courses in my first year of university. I did archaeology, I did biology, I did math, I did dance, I did a classic course, and history, like so many different things. And I remember in my first semester talking to my stepdad and being like, I went into university thinking that I wanted to do psychology, but I kind of like the idea of maybe being a high school teacher. And my stepdad, who knows me super well, right? He's a child psychologist. He was like, no, Emily, you don't want to be a high school teacher. You want to be a professor at university. I was like, interesting. Second semester of university, I was like, oh, this archaeology course is so fascinating. Maybe I want to be an archaeologist. And my stepdad's like, no, you don't want to be an archaeologist. You want to do classics. I was like, interesting. And then all of a sudden I was like, yeah, actually, this makes sense. I love ancient history. I love the languages. And then in my second year of university, that's when I really started to deep dive into classics. I started learning Latin, which was intense, right? 5 days a week of classes, and learning all of these other different things. And all of a sudden, it was a perfect fit. So at the end of my second year of university, I was like, remember Trinity College? So I applied to do my third year abroad at Trinity. And that's where I really got thrown in the deep end with the languages, Greek and Latin. I was also learning Irish that year. And it was so cool. Fell in love with Trinity, fell in love with classics even more. Went back to Calgary, to finish up my degree, and then applied for a master's degree. But it was so cool just learning about ancient history and the technology and reading things that people wrote 2,000 years ago in their own words, right? Not even in the translation. That's what really stuck with me. It triggered my imagination, and that's what got me into doing my undergraduate degree in classics.
That's great. That's a fascinating story. And I think a lot of the students in the room and elsewhere today can relate to making a choice, while learning a lot of things, and not a definite idea to begin with, but to kind of develop an interest the more you learn about it. So that's really interesting. So what did you do then after your undergraduate degree?
Okay, so after my undergrad, I went back to Trinity College, yay, to start my master's degree in classics. And that's where, yeah, I started. First year was just sort of on my own, doing the research. I did a master's or an MLit, which is a fully research degree. I was researching the lives and the jobs of the imperial household slaves and freedmen. So the people who worked for no pay because they were slaves in the household of the emperor and empress of Rome, but as seen through their epitaphs, through their tombstones, their gravestones. So there's a lot of history, there was a lot of Latin involved. And then in the second year of my master's, I was invited to start teaching the first year Latin course for their undergraduates. And whoa, that's when I really discovered my love for teaching, right? Not only just the subject matter, like I love Latin, it's so cool. It's like, it's very mathy, very formula-y, but being able to teach other people this was so cool. And so I, through the master's degree, continued teaching Latin every year. Eventually started teaching some master's level courses as well for people who are doing like the 1 year taught degree, teaching them Latin. And I just loved it so much and finished my MLit and was like, yeah, I want to do a PhD now. So jumped into the PhD, but then a couple years into that, I started realizing that actually I started resenting the time that I was doing all the research and just loved the teaching so much. And Cosetta, like you saw that, I'm sure, while we were in the same office together, that I really ended up spending probably more time teaching than I needed to. And I did an evening course, so it was extramural. Lots of people from around the community came in to learn Latin, and that's what fired me up. So yeah, classics is where I learned, in particular, my love of teaching. And then I quit my PhD, but that's okay.
Thank you. I think the interest for popular culture, matched with the focus on teaching, and also teaching to a diversity of audiences, because about undergraduate students, but also graduate and adults, and that's they are completely different groups, age brackets, but also backgrounds and needs, and you need to adapt to different learning styles, and you need to adapt your teaching style at the speed of light. So it's something very challenging, it's very relatable, and it's quite I think infectious, because you really want to do it in the best way that you can to make the most of the experience for the learners. So thank you for sharing that. Can you tell us what was about teaching that called you?
So for me, it's seeing the light or the spark in someone's eyes when they figure something out. If they had a question and it wasn't working, being able to help them through that. And then, see, I'm getting tingles just talking about it. I love teaching so much, but seeing how I can help people, but especially that spark, that moment. If I can even just get one of those from a student through a whole term, it really, it keeps me going. And I've been doing this for years. And it's, funny that I would switch from teaching classics into teaching yoga, but it's the same thing to me. I can still see the spark in people's eyes. And the demographic that I teach now is very similar to the demographic that I was teaching, particularly in the evening course at Trinity. So I get to, employ some of those things. But for me, it's that spark. Yeah. Ooh, shivery just talking about it.
You, Emily. I think it's very easy for me to relate to that. It's certainly a great moment, and it's very rewarding, and it definitely shows you that whoever is learning is not just learning the language or whatever you're teaching them, but it triggers a process that is going to carry through. They're going to apply to something else as well. So it's really a great moment. Let's move on to you now. What is your current professional path?
Sorry, my mic was muted. Sure. So yes, now I teach yoga, and I have been teaching yoga for 10 years, more than 10 years now in Vancouver. At first, even way back when I was living in Ireland, yoga for me was always like the thing for me, right? The thing that I would do to reset and get more energy and, yeah, sure, stretch out and all of those things. But that would help me refocus so that I could go back into my life and have a bit more energy. And I never once thought that it would be something that I would want to teach until I moved to Vancouver and started learning how to be a personal trainer. And that was really cool. I did a whole certification for that, but something wasn't quite right. And then there was an amazing teacher, a yoga teacher, whose classes I loved, and he offered a training. And I was like, oh, you know what? I think I want to do this, particularly because I liked his classes. And when I got in, it was just like just like weeping. It was so perfect. It felt so right to be teaching yoga, specifically compared to personal training. So even teaching yoga, I can see the same light that I was talking about, the same aha moments when I give a little adjustment or an idea of something for people to think about, and I can see them really settle into their bodies and just let go of the daily grind and the thought processes. Plus, also knowing Latin made it really easy to learn all the muscle groups and bones and stuff like that. So, and I like to sprinkle in a little bit of Latin or anatomy, or talking about puros, fire, the Greek word, and purifying, right? So all of these, I still tie in the classics even when I'm teaching yoga these days. So I hope that answers that for you.
It does. Thank you very much. Yes, when you're teaching somebody, you're not just conveying, I suppose. It's the moment. The key moment is really when you realize that you're enabling somebody to continue to learn. It's not just I'm teaching you, I don't know, the first declension. It's more about I'm enabling you. I'm equipping you, I'm training you to understand how this mechanism works. So whether that is a linguistic process or something to do with the posture, for example, it's certainly transferring a skill to somebody, and that's really powerful, I think. So thank you for that. I have one question that I think everybody wants to address in this room, and it is precisely valuable because you have moved on to an entirely different profession path. What do you think a degree in classics can provide for people beyond academia or education?
Perfect. First of all, I think a degree in classics triggers your own imagination, right? It makes you think about the past in different ways. And what's cool about that? Well, it makes you an interesting person. And I have never not been able to rely on studying classics as an icebreaker before. It is an amazing conversation starter, whether that's with just a random taxi driver or, a potential employer, because not many people do it. Not many people study classics. And so because it's so rare, people get really interested in your reasons about why you want to do it, or what you learned. And I think that a degree in classics makes you an interesting person, and proves that you're someone who's interested in things. And any degree proves that you are someone who can stick with it, right? Stick with a task for 3 to 4 years.
Thank you. Just one last question, building on what you just said there. Do you think it's a valuable quality as a candidate, or as somebody in employment in any career path, that to showcase the skill that you are a curious person, somebody who learns for life, who just doesn't stop learning, who doesn't conclude, your education with your degree, but has continuously new interest, that can just self-motivate to seek and learn new things. Do you think that's a skill that is valuable?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think in particular, doing classics proves that you can be a critical thinker, because the sources that we look at are written by the people themselves. They try to rose tint history, right? So looking at history with a critical thinking eye, it proves that you can do that you're a critical thinker. It proves that you can be versatile, because you can learn so many different things in classics, whether it's the languages or the history or the archaeology, and being able to combine all of those to make a bigger picture. I think employers are really interested in people who can draw on lots of different skills like that. And also people who are lifelong learners, right? Like, I never stop learning. I'm learning Sanskrit, for goodness sake, right? Like, it's so cool to continue learning and pushing yourself and expanding your mind. And there's a lot of really neat things these days in classics, particularly with taking a feminist look at things, or decolonizing, anti-racist classical studies is super fascinating. So don't let anyone tell you that, oh, it's from thousands of years ago, so people already know everything they know about it. That's rubbish. Like, it's continually evolving. And I think that it's just a really exciting field to get into, whether or not you stick with it for a job afterwards. The fact that you can stick with it for a degree is like, what a cool thing. What a cool opportunity.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Emily. We would like to thank you very much for sharing your experience and your life story with this audience here in the room. And we value very much your contribution and your story. And I hope we can see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I hope that you all do classics and overwhelm the university.
Thank you.
Bye.
Mairead from Holy Faith Clontarf is asking, can we say something about the combinations in the arts degree at Maynooth? So Ainan is going to help us with this. Thank you. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks. Good question. Very topical at the minute. The arts degree, if anybody knows what it is basically a 3-year degree in which you can choose from a huge menu of subjects. The idea with it is to get you skilled up to a very high level 8 qualification level, but you can do it through loads of different paths. First year, basically they break your first year into different blocks, and you can fill that first year with up to 4 subjects if you like. Classics could be one. You could do all classics all the way through your degree if you want, as far as I know. But really, basically, the idea there is that people sometimes don't know exactly what they want to do. So the arts qualification, that course, will let you try a whole lot of different things all at once. And that's really good. And crucially built into it is forgiveness. If you choose subjects that for some reason don't work out so well, all you have to do is run out the year with it, and then you can drop them. There's no real consequence to that, which is nice. The idea here is to encourage people to take a little bit of risk, try something, have a go at it, pass it. It'll stretch you. You'll grow anyway by doing something that isn't maybe perfect for you. And then you can move on to keep other subjects into second year and into third year. So for example, one of the subjects, if you want to take classics, you would study a bit of it in first year. You could do then more of it in second year and even more of it again in third year, running all the way through. Usually people will bolster that with a second subject at the same time. Critical skills is a subject that exists for first year only. The idea here is that it is a skills-based program to skill you up to do well in university, academically and socially, but mostly academically. It gives you skills to do nearly any of the study, to study any of the groups that you could take on as a subject. It's very unique to Maynooth, actually, isn't it? I don't think there's much of that elsewhere. It's the biggest subject in first year group. Lots of people take it. You come out of it with better research skills and more critical thinking and more effective communication skills than if you hadn't done it. Well, that's the idea anyway, so that you can apply that to any course you do, and you'll use that for life later on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So yes, my colleague Kieran McGroarty was just pointing out that critical skills is a course, is a subject, yes, but it's also a skill that is learned throughout our modules. So, you know, when you're attending a tutorial, for example, you are challenged to use that skill and you learn it with your subject, not just theoretically, if that makes sense. So it's one of the key skills that are associated with our subject. So thanks again, and hopefully I'll see you all next year.